Hi guys, Rex here. We're going to cover a real hard topic now. This is the seventh commandment. A lot of people get way bent out of shape when we cover this, and I think that there's a lot of different avenues how everyone really fails on this if you zoom in far enough. So I'm not going to be Mr. Self-righteous guy and pretend like I got all my stuff together, okay? But we are going to be honest about what the seventh commandment is, why it's important, and what the potential ramifications are psychologically, spiritually, and sociologically for failing to keep this properly. And there is really good reasons why this commandment should still exist, even if God didn't say to do it, or if God didn't even exist, which is a silly thought, okay? But even if there was no God, this, just in terms of sociology and for your own personal well being, it's a really good idea to take heed to these words, okay? Very simple commandment, and I'll read it and then we'll start to step on some toes, okay? Thou shalt not commit adultery. Okay. Now, adultery has basically been really misdefined, particularly the Victorian era has changed the entire dynamic and concept of relationships between men and women. Okay. And in the way the government views marriage is different than the way that God views marriage. Okay. So adultery is basically if you already got two people that are joined in the flesh together, and they have created that permanent relationship where they've joined together in the flesh. You know what I'm talking about? Ever do that before? Okay. If that has happened and someone else comes along and tries to get joined in with that same flesh, that's adultery. So, like, if I've joined the flesh with my wife, okay, and so we've committed the act of consummation, and so we are married. We are one flesh now. We're not two, but we're one, right? And some other dude comes around and tries getting in there, there's going to be a freaking problem for a number of reasons, right? But that's what adultery would literally be, okay? Adultery, sometimes if you go to like church camp, or if you're familiar with the preachings of churchianity, they like to sometimes like erase parts that should be there and like magnify parts that aren't in there, okay? So one of the things, and this is where I'm going to get in trouble, and this before you comment, let's have the full conversation, okay? I'm going to challenge some thoughts. I want everyone to think about it for at least 10 seconds before they start typing on the computer, okay? Because people get bent out of shape on this deal because they think I'm going to be attacking them or vice versa, or let's take the flesh out of this one. Even it might even be a good idea to hit the old pause button and pray first so that we can actually get the heart of this law correct. This is an important issue. This has destroyed a lot of people's lives, okay? Is this deal right here. Thou shalt not commit adultery, okay? When you marry someone, that is not something that happens on a piece of paper. Now, traditionally, the marriage ceremony has been done so that two people like publicly commit themselves to each other with witnesses, and everyone knows that we're going to go and actually we're going to consummate. And later, if all of a sudden we have a spat or a fight, I can't just escape and evade and say, "Oh, we never consummated. I'm not actually married to her." There's actually witnesses where you commit yourself to, the village in a form of accountability, saying we are now committed. We are announcing that we are about to consummate. The act of consummation, the joining of the flesh, is the marriage contract. So if you go and join yourself with somebody at the bar in the town pump bathroom or whatever you did, you just married that person, okay? You just joined flesh with them. You don't decide later, should we get married? We've been joining flesh for such a long time that and should we dude, you're already married. Did you know that? By the natural law, you are already there. Stuff that's written on a paper is kind of sort of irrelevant. Now, I think it's important for people to go through the marriage ceremony and announce that it's for accountability's sake so that people can't hose each other over because people are highly emotional. And there are times where you're like, oh man, she really made me angry or vice versa. Or he yelled at the furnace, I hate him. And then all of a sudden, like you got this problem where people want to deviate off this path and pretend like they're not married anymore. So that's why you have these verbal deals where you say like till death do us part and all that business, okay? And so committing like adultery is trying to enter into flesh relationships with people who already are joined together, okay? So sleeping with someone else's wife is adultery. Okay, that's what that means. Premarital sex, as preached by youth pastors and stuff, is kind of misleading concept because it's assuming that you can have sex disconnected from marriage. That's not how it works. If you join flesh with somebody, you just married them. Now, if you go running around joining flesh with other people, you are now committing adultery. Okay? Now, I know we don't like to hear that because a lot of us live on planet Earth where the old Y chromosome comes out and the old double X chromosome comes out and there's hormones and people do stuff that they, maybe like in a passion, in the heat of the moment, and they go down that path, okay? There's always forgiveness when we're goofballs if we seek it and repent of our sin, okay? However, I'm not going to dodge the law here. I'm not going to dodge the point of this. The reason why it's so hardcore and why there's not really a lot of wiggle room here is because when you superglue yourself by joining flesh with them, that's like a spiritual bond, a biochemical and electrical bond that happens biochemically and electrically between the two people. Like you can read the science books, okay? Plus like just emotionally and psychologically, the investment, especially if children all of a sudden are a part of the equation, like you're so super glued to that person that if you try to tear it apart, you both are basically destroyed in the act or horribly wounded, okay? And so, like, that's why there's really not any, like, now, Moses did offer certificates of divorce because people had such hard hearts to where they would have to divorce someone and put them away. But part of that deal was they wouldn't run around and you can't remarry then, no, see? According to the old law. And this is where people are going to hit the down button on the video, man, but I'm sorry. I'm just reading I'm just like giving you the context. You can read the book for yourself. There were certificates of divorce given, but basically the way it worked is like they were permanently just like separated. And they can't go and marry somebody because they're already married. The divorce certificate just means they got away from the other person. And that was kind of a rough deal. Another question that gets brought up is like, and trust me, don't take me out of context on this one. A lot of people go down the rabbit trail of like multiple wives and all this stuff, right? Because if you look back, Solomon had a huge harem, all kinds of wives. King David, who is upheld by even the sweetest old church piano playing ladies. I love King David. He's my favorite Bible character, right? That dude had like 7 wives. There's actually no, trust me, I want one. The original model was Adam and Eve. I think that's probably the easiest way to go. I can only afford emotionally and financially and just in terms of energy and in terms of quality, take care of one properly. And it's even hard to properly take care of one wife, right? As from a man's perspective, right? From the husband's perspective. So I think that's a great way to go. But there is no prohibition anywhere in the book for having a harem. So that's an interesting thing too. I just thought I'd throw that in there because people get down these rabbits. This is interesting. This is why I'm going to get in so much trouble. Bear with me, guys. This is just a conversation. Like I said, don't type before we have the full conversation. Guys will disobey the commandment that says, thou shalt not commit adultery. They'll sleep around or they'll get divorced and then remarry other people. Okay? They are now actually technically, even what like Jesus said, he's like, if you put away your wife and make her go and find some other dude, you are making her commit adultery. That's what Jesus said. And he was like out of all the nice like prophets and preachers and all the different guys in the Bible, like he was like the one that like was pretty a very, very understanding and loving like teacher, you know what I'm saying? And he said like if you divorce someone and put them away and they have to go and find somebody else to marry, you're making them commit adultery. And every time they think they're married, they're actually committing adultery. It's a heavy duty thing. So this is maybe a video for younger people, okay? And not for the old people who are already down the wrong frickin' path, okay? Because old people are going to like fiercely type horrible comments defending their fleshly accidental position they've gotten themselves into, okay? Now we can take this further. We look at the law even further. So like Jesus said, for example, in the New Testament, if you read that, he's like, dude, if you even look at someone with lust, you're committing adultery in your heart, okay? Because the point is, it's not just the act of consummation in the flesh that is the joining of two. It's also the consummation of spirit and commitment and emotion and the entire love force between two people, okay? That's being violated when you lust after another chick, okay? Now, if some chick walks by in the mall and you accidentally notice that she's way hot and your Y chromosome kicks in and you're like, whoa, point in your eyeballs. If you're a dude, go like this, like for a second, you're like, whoa. That like, there's this one chick one time where sitting in a restaurant in Madrid, and there's some really pretty gals in Spain, right? And so me and my wife were both having supper, and this lady walked by, and she wasn't dressed like all crazy. She was very conservatively dressed, but she was like a solid, like, on the scale from 1 to 10, she was like an 11. Like Cinderella mode. Never seen like Miss Universe except better in terms of just like symmetry and like just natural beauty. It was like a jaw dropping deal. Remember on that cartoon Cinderella where your mouth hangs open like from the guards when she comes in with her magic dress or whatever? It was one of them situations, and my wife looked over like, holy smokes, that lady's really pretty. I'm like, yeah. Is that committing adultery? No. That's noticing God's beautiful creation. And it's okay. And you will have a chromosomal, hormonal effect to that. Lusting after somebody is what he's really talking about. Like, don't choose to go down the path in your mind further and be like, let me imagine a few things here for a minute. That's what he's talking about, okay? And then, of course, there's the whole struggle nowadays where you got one of these giant digital, huge Windows magic mirror type situations, which is a magic mirror that goes straight to the bowels of hell and Babylon, access to the most horrible debauchery possible, and it's at everyone's fingertips at any given moment. So that's a huge problem, too, when it comes to this commandment as well. And that's something that pretty much, I mean, I would imagine that most guys, or I don't know, I would imagine most people struggle with that idea too, okay? It's tough. Like, there's so much easy access to this. I'm not saying that, like, it's possible to maintain righteousness in this. However, there is the center aiming point on the target. There's different rings. You got like the X ring in the middle, and then you got the other ring here. Like, the center of the X ring is where we should be aiming. Are we going to miss? On this topic, there's a lot of wind blowing, okay? So you got wind blowing from the left. It's change in direction. It's called hormones. It's called biology. It's really tough, right? And so it's a strong commitment to really choose to fall in love with that one person. When you commit yourself to them, that's who you're dedicated to. That wind will blow and it'll hit us, but we still aim straight for the center of the target. Sometimes you miss. And I'm not, just in terms of your mind and your mentality, but you sure as heck cannot be running around with the flesh and joining flesh with other people. That if you willingly do that, that's a bad deal because it'll destroy your life. And I couldn't tell you how many family members, cousins, friends, people that I looked up to, people that are still my friends, like, their lives have been complete, like a nuclear bomb took out their entire life because of something like adultery. Like one person wanted to run off or they didn't want to stay committed to each other, and then they run off, and then pretty soon they have 3 different wives or 4 different wives or 5 different wives. Or if they were rambunctious in high school, they might have like 100 different wives running all over the face of the earth, all committing adultery, and they don't even know it. So everyone's running around, like, especially in the West, dude, it's freaking Babylon out here. And so the old school values are actually very good. There was a lot less miserable people when these laws were very strictly enforced, okay? And people, of course, were still promiscuous. It's hard to get away from the biology, but that doesn't change the center of the aiming point, okay? And so, like, the reasons why you would want to stick with one are obvious. It's logistically way more simple. You don't lose half your stuff. Um, you like it ages with like wine if you choose it to, right? I've been lucky enough. We got married in like I don't know. We've been married 17 or 18 years now, and like there's times where, of course, like, but it ages like wine. You really get to know each other. You become best friends, and here's the part people don't think about. This is where people get selfish. They think about their own damn feelings all the time. Okay, and like, yeah, but I'm not happy. It is not. It's not working out. Well, that's why you say for better or worse. If you have children and you're rearing children and you ditch them or cause them to go through the psychological horror and pain because mommy and daddy were so selfish they couldn't get their shit together and stick it out, and your hearts are so hardened that you're going to you're going to cause them to go through that. Anyone who's from a broken home understands exactly what I'm talking about. It's rough, and it's child abuse to get a divorce while you have kids. Unless you married a real piece of work and he comes home from work and just starts swinging or whatever, right? Well, who's the smart person there? Why'd you marry someone like that? It's called like wisdom in selecting your mate. So this video is not going to be my most popular video, but I'm not saying I hit the center of the target every time. I've been tempted and I've like come really close to really failing bad a few times over the course of the years in my life on this particular deal, okay? It's hard. And I'm not saying we always hit the target. I'm not saying I'm righteous at all, but I am saying there is a target that does exist. And if we tenaciously cleave to these things to be not an option, like for the young people out there who have not yet dug themselves into the holes that some of the older people might have, okay? It's going to be very hard for older people to take this video because we're all kind of like breaking it all constantly all the time, okay? But for the younger people out there, when you select that first person that you're going to consummate with and join flesh with, you better be damn sure that that's the exact right one. You need to go through the courting process. Courting does not mean the physical. No, I'm talking about like conversations, like in-depth, hardcore evaluation, testing, like being honest. Like don't like there's a certain amount of peacocking to attract your mate, but like be honest with them. Show them like who you really are. Sit on the couch and fart and do whatever you do, or like, be sloppy at the table, or whoever you are. Just be yourself. See if you guys can handle each other. See if your mate doing okay. And then when it comes to the point where you decide that, hey, I think this is my life mate, you have to make that choice. You have to make a choice that there is this thing called a dictionary, and in it is a word in the D category called divorce. And you have to I'm talking to the young people, okay? Calm down, all the rest of you. Well, yeah, like just put a thumbs down on the video and feel special, okay? I'm talking to the young people here who haven't yet screwed the pooch on this topic, okay? And yes, I'm talking straight. But I'm dead serious. It's important, okay? When you choose that person and you are going to commit yourself to them, when you make a vow, till death do us part, take that deal seriously. Your life will be way better. And if you both decide before you tie the knot and join the flesh that there is no such word as divorce that even exists. That's what my wife and I were actually coached into repeating that to each other before her folks would allow us to marry, right? And because they're really old school, like really old school. And they said, there is no such thing as divorce. You understand that? I want you to repeat it to her. Now she repeats it back to you. Do you both understand what that means? And the reason they were obnoxious about it is because you can look around the world and it's miserable to go through that, man. And especially if you have kids, now you're dragging other people into your selfish, horrible misery that you have created through your lack of whatever, like, compromise or your hardened hearts or like pride or whatever it is that causes humans to fight. We all fight and disagree, and we don't want to let go and admit that the other person was right and we were wrong, or vice versa. We all do that. But you have to choose ahead of time that that is not an option. You're like, you might as well like permanently like Siamese twins yourselves to each other. You know what I'm saying? Like there is no separation. That's the center of the aiming point. That's what will bring you the most joy in life. And it's hard to do, but like it's actually easier to do than the other one. Ask anyone who's been through that flame in the fire and the explosion and just lose everything. And then the kids and the drama and the stress and the anxiety and just everything that they have to do to get through it. It's a horrible deal. You don't want to do that. Do not walk through that minefield. There's a giant minefield out there called committing adultery, okay? Or like not honoring your commitment to the person that you have joined flesh with. So that's that's the fullness of the conversation. I'm not saying we're all going to do it. I mean, there's a lot of us watching the video here who are already way the hell off track, totally missed the target, took 20 shots at it, didn't work, scope wasn't zeroed. Or like, it's okay. That's why God's law is there, man. It's telling us, it's giving us a target, and then the instructions in God's law are telling us how to dial in the scope, to tune it, to zero it, okay? So that we can actually hit the target more often. That's why we're reading it. I'm not reading it to make people feel bad. I'm reading it so that, okay, wherever you're at now, we will actually try to hit the center of the target better, okay? Me included, everybody else. I'm not cooler than nobody else, and I'm sure it's all not the authority. He's the authority, but that's why even Jesus was so hardcore on that topic. He says, if you divorce someone and put her away, and she has to run off with some other dude, you made her commit adultery, and now you're guilty of it too. And so that's the old school reality, and don't hate me for repeating what a book says. If you don't like the book, talk to the guy that wrote it. I didn't write it. I'm just reading it. All right, guys. That was a tough one. Real tough one, especially for us Westerners. Next commandment, coming up soon to a city near you, is something that most of us will be able to have an agreement on, unless you're a bank robber. All right, stay tuned.